Hello everyone. I wanted to just begin by welcoming all of you. My name is Amishi Jha, and I am a faculty member of the psychology department here in the College of Arts and Sciences on the Gables campus. And before I hand it over to our esteemed speaker, Dr. Dan Gottlieb, you're in for a treat, I want to just say a few words about the sort of momentum and support that allowed us to all be here together today. Is that all right? Sure. It'll be short. So, the UMindfulness lecture series, and I'm very happy that today's our launch event, and we couldn't be starting off in better hands. The UMindfulness lecture series is an outreach arm of a university-wide initiative called Mindfulness Research and Practice Initiative. And it began as a collaboration between myself and my colleague, Scott Rogers. Scott, do you want to stand up? Just so everybody knows who you are. Scott Rogers. Scott is the director of the Mindfulness and Law program at the law school here. And so we both decided that as mindfulness was a sort of core passion interest for both of us, that we should come together and see how we might not only engage in research, and he is a critical collaborator of ours, but how might we offer mindfulness training and mindfulness as a concept across the university. So we started the initiative, and through that process have learned a lot about how it is that we can go beyond the university itself and even broaden it out to the community at large. So Scott is obviously an innovator, a developer, a deliverer of mindfulness training that's very accessible to a broad range of audiences. Of course, in the law school, he works with law students and lawyers. And I'm what we call a contemplative neuroscientist. Anybody ever heard that phrase before? So a contemplative neuroscientist, what I do is I look to see in my lab, there's many people in my lab here today, which makes me very happy. What we're interested in doing is seeing how the world's contemplative tradition, wisdom traditions, and the practices and training that they offer, how might those practices and training be able to change the structure and function of the brain? Not only to make the brain healthier, but also to help improve resilience and psychological health and optimize our ability to live and work, not only with success, but with ease and calm and balance. So Scott is the perfect partner in working together on that. And I arrived here, at the time I arrived here, which was 2010, I was really part of the first wave of folks that are interested in building the footprint for brain imaging on the University of Miami campus. I'm very happy to report to you that we have our new brain imaging machine, we've got a new NIH-funded building, and so now a lot of exciting things are about to launch. We've been able to hire a few key new faculty members from great places like Stanford and NIH that are helping us build. So there's a lot of exciting things happening here, not only with regard to brain imaging, but of course with regard to using brain imaging as a valuable tool in the service of studying things like mindfulness, meditation. But of course, none of this would have been possible, meaning our all coming together here today, if it weren't for the generous support of one of my dear friends and a friend of mindfulness, Mrs. Maria Kluge. And she is not only obviously a big supporter of mindfulness and has helped start many centers worldwide, but she's a longtime practitioner and teacher herself, and we were very fortunate that she actually led a retreat for students this weekend for undergraduates at the University of Miami. And it's our hope that we'll continue to be able to bring offerings of mindfulness practice opportunities to the university community and to the broader South Florida community. So I want to just begin by just a deep acknowledgement of gratitude for her support for our efforts. So in the spirit of mindfulness, being in the here and the now, I want to now return to our reason for being here now, just to hear a wonderful person tell us about things that I know will delight and inspire you, Dr. Dan Gottlieb. So let me say a word about Dan. He is a clinical psychologist. He began his clinical psychology practice in 1969 after receiving a PhD from Temple University. And he is since 1985, the host of a very popular and very beneficial NPR show in Philadelphia, WH in Philadelphia, called Voices in the Family. Now, I came from Philadelphia and regularly tuned in, so it's a particular treat for me to be able to have him here in Miami with us today. And what I can say about Dan is that he is absolutely an inspiration. And I know that you will not only enjoy what he's going to tell us, but you will benefit from what he's about to tell us. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Dan Gottlieb to the University of Miami.
Thanks so much, Amishi. And thanks for this wonderful reception. I keep hearing that this is the first and the inaugural, and just made me scared to death. So from trauma to recovery to gratitude and love. Okay, so that's my story, but how I got here, really, it's all a theory, right? It's just my way of looking at it. And isn't that the truth with the way we all describe our lives? It's just a theory. So, what's the truth? Well, I have a dear friend of mine whose son 3 years ago just died of a brain tumor. And he was angry at the injustice. He said, Dan, you know, I'm so filled with anger. And he said, and at the same time, I'm so moved by the outpouring of love and compassion and support. And I said, well, hey, I said, both those feelings make sense. He said, no, you don't understand. He said, it's like my mind goes back and forth all day long. It's exhausting. So I said, oh, I said, so it's kind of like shining a flashlight back and forth. So he said, yeah, exactly. I said, Edmund, who's holding the flashlight? Fleming. Put it back a little bit. Put it back. In a way, I feel like I've been holding the flashlight my whole life. My whole life. So, let me tell you some of my experience here. When I bumped into you last year at the Mind and Life Institute in Denver, big baseball fan, I went out to Coors Field. I had a brisket sandwich because they said they were famous for brisket sandwiches. Talk about something. Every brisket sandwich. So we're going home on a bus, and somebody came up to me. It was a group of evangelical students who got out, and he put his hand on my shoulder and he says, do you mind if I pray for you? God wants you cured. And I'm thinking, really calling in big guns for indigestion? Of course, he didn't see me, right? He saw a wheelchair. And all the assumptions he made about suffering and what I want in life and what healing means, and he didn't see me. That's my experience. Many, many people don't see me. Children don't do that. They see me. And that's why I wrote this new book, The Wisdom of Born With. Children know about love. It's uninhibited. It's freely offered. They know about awe. They know about joy and laughter. They can create delight in others just by being. And it goes on. We lose that. We can reclaim that by becoming more of who we are. Back to the flesh. Back to the flesh. So I want to start at the beginning. So I want to go earlier than the Buddha. A little earlier than that. I want to go back to the sixth day, according to the Bible. Adam and Eve, the last thing that happened before God kicked back and took his day off. He breathed life into Adam. Divine inspiration. And every time we exhale, we inspire. It is divine. Talk about miracles. What that inspiration does for our bodies, our brains. And we miss it. We miss it. So here's what I ask today of you, what I invite. You don't have to do anything. You don't even have to learn anything. You don't have to carry anything out of you. Except reading my book. Please, just sit here with me and be mindful. Just be aware of your breath, aware of what you're experiencing. Do that for yourselves. I had the honor and privilege of watching my little 5-year-old virtual grandson take his first steps when he was a little over a year. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but it truly is a breathtaking experience. I see. He was holding onto a chair, and his mother was a couple of feet away. And he lets go of the chair and stands and looks over and reaches and sits down. It's a whole dance. And then he takes that first step. That's truly faith. Right? It's faith. What incredible courage it takes to let go of what's familiar. The most difficult thing we can do is let go of what's familiar. And in our own lifetime, to let go of that illusory roadmap that we think guides us through life. How frightening it is to let go. To let go. It's always an act of faith. Letting go is always an act of faith. I said I've been carrying that flashlight most of my life. So I am 7 years old at a restaurant with my 12-year-old sister, my parents, and my 2 maternal grandmothers. Sunday night, it's restaurant time. So I'm sitting there, and when we're ordering, the discussion ensues. What fish is one of them? Well, this one might have bones, this one might not. One's too fishy, one's too tough. I've never understood about fishy fish. And my sister, who's now 12, emerging womanhood, outdoor. And there's a parrot in the lobby there. And I go hang out with the parrot. And I'm looking at these people, I'm thinking, they're my family, but I don't belong to them. I'm different than they are. And it wasn't an upsetting feeling. It was a simple fact. And that insight went underground. But it really does open that dialectic we all struggle with. To be unique or to be part of. We really want both. When I got into school, even in elementary school, I failed good. I had a learning disability before we knew about learning disabilities. And I felt stupid. People thought I was being lazy, not trying, but I was. And I felt stupid. I got poor grades throughout school. The one thing I was good at was making friends. Kids trusted me, and they liked to talk to me, and I liked to talk to them. So when I got into 7th grade, the esteemed teacher that everybody wanted, Boy Scout leader, that guy, I got him, and he kind of took me under his wing, and he taught me about psychology. I'd never heard of it. But because he taught me about it, because I knew that was me, and because he was the first person who ever believed in me, I knew I could do it. First time in my life, I knew I could do it. So from age 12 on, I knew I was going to be a psychotherapist. 3 months later, I found myself in that teacher's bed, being abused. It reinforced my experience of being different. The bad grades, being different. I had so many friends. P.S. That man, all these years later, gave me more than he took away. How lucky am I that I have that balance? So all my life, I really wanted to be a part of, looking as though I was a part of, not feeling it. So I thought if I got better grades, I'd be a part of. If I got a beautiful wife and a house in the suburbs, I'd be a part of. If I had beautiful kids, I'd be a part of. If I was successful in my career, I had all of those things. And yet, I was never a part of. I was just observing people. My first academic job was in an inpatient psychiatric unit. I listened to the staff talk about those patients with those labels, and I listened to the patients telling their life story. I didn't know where I belonged. I'm like that group, but I'm like this group. And who am I? Where do I fit? I always thought I could find it out. One of my great lessons I learned, however, in the beginning of learning was a few years after that. My girls were 1 and 2. We'd been married about 5, 6 years. My wife developed a malignant melanoma. Yeah, you can take these things off, right? Learning disability, sexual abuse. Okay. There's more. There's more. therapy. Meanwhile, I'm trying to care for her, care for my two little girls, do my job. And at the time I was taking a postgraduate course in family therapy. And everybody knew what I was going through. My supervisor, teacher, who's become my dear friend, says to me, "Hi Dan, how are you?" And I did the mantra, Sandy's this, and the kids are here, and she said, "No." I said, "How are you?" And I just started to sob, realizing what I felt for the first time, waking up to my life, to my suffering, to my fear, waking up. It felt so good, and it was the first time in my life that I was able to feel vulnerable and needy in front of someone I respected. I felt a feeling I never felt before. And then 5 years later, I'm driving on the turnpike in Pennsylvania. And on the other side of the turnpike, an 18-wheel tractor trailer lost a wheel, bounced across the turnpike, crushed my car, and broke my neck. You can have that on the checklist. So, I knew I would never belong ever again in the way I hoped for. My most profound experience from that was a sense of alienation. Frieda Fromm-Reichmann said, the analyst, said that alienation is the scourge of this world. And she said that in 1935 in Berlin. It's worse now. It's worse. It's the most painful feeling I've ever known. It was made worse by people coming with understandable, reactive emotions, telling me that I would be okay, it'll be okay, don't worry, you'll be able to do this stuff. Just made me feel more distant from my people, my humans. What does it mean to be human? Am I one of them anymore? Everybody looked different than me, talked differently than me. And when they looked at me differently than they ever had before. What does it mean to be human? I desperately needed to know, I truly did not know if I was one of them anymore. I'll tell you what helped. I have a cousin that came in and looked at me and began to cry. And he said, "What's it like? What's it like to be you? What's it like?" What was healing was people who didn't try to do anything. It was kindness and compassion in the face of my nakedness, literally and metaphorically, my brokenness, my helplessness, and my hopelessness. What's it like is an act of love. All I wanted to do was close my eyes and never wake up those first few days. And one night I was in ICU, and a nurse came up to me and said, "You're a psychologist, are you?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "May I talk to you after your shift?" And I'm afraid. asked me that, this worthless. She came back and she talked to me about her life and the despair she felt. And this was the first human I had spoken to that didn't seem to care about my brokenness. And in that moment, I didn't care either. I only cared about where she was suffering and the overlap. She didn't know if she could go on because she was in so much pain. And I knew that feeling. And at the end, I referred to a therapist, and she thanked me. And I closed my eyes. And I said, I can live with this, I think. She showed me that I might have some worth. She showed me that none of the words, but by asking something of me, she showed me, she taught me, not with words, not with words. So, 3 years later, well, before that, I told my wife, a couple of my loved ones, that I would try this for 3 years. And if I couldn't take it anymore, I wouldn't go on. And at the end of 3 years, I took myself into my bedroom and I spoke with, I don't know, God, higher power, inner power, I don't know. And I said, okay, I'll live with this. You have to give me hope that one day I'll walk. The voice back said, no hope. Live or die, it's your choice. And I said, then give me hope that I won't be so sick. Same thing. No hope. Live or die. And if you choose to live, you're choosing to live the life you have, with the body you have, with the mind you have, with the history you have. Choose this life or not. It was one of the greatest gifts, one of the greatest teachings of my life. Choose this life or not. I've never been so empowered in my whole life. So, what does it mean to be human? And from the time I began to research that, I approached everyone I knew with a curious mind and an open heart. And that's what I want to teach. Approach everyone with a curious mind and an open heart. All of my practice, all of my patients experience dis-ease, disease. 2 words, dis-ease. And they are just like I was. Things that interfere with their finding ease, we all do the if onlys, right? If only I do this. If only I lose weight. If only I get good grades, get into a good graduate school. We never get there. We never get there because there is no there. I just wrote an article for the Huffington Post that's entitled 3 Steps to Lifelong Happiness. And the opening word in that is, really? First step is never ever read anything that starts with number of steps 2. So we have this roadmap that I talked about, that we follow no matter what. And when we suffer, we follow it even more. And I've got a patient who I saw years ago, was in her marriage, she was in the right marriage, the one she was supposed to be in, raising the right kids, having the right career. She was miserable. And she said to me, when she changed her life, she said, I will never abandon myself again. That's some powerful language, isn't it? How we abandon ourselves. By never picking that flashlight up, huh? By not being awake and aware. So, I want to tell you the good news about quadriplegia. So it's not just a good partner. And for all of you here over 50, because I wear a catheter, when you get up and pee in the middle of the night, so that works out well. It's learning to be alone in the world and feel connected to all of humanity at the same time. It's learning to help, it's learning to tolerate helplessness and vulnerability and vulnerability and vulnerability. I was in a session years ago with a 17-year-old girl who was complaining about, she didn't like herself because, I forget, either acne or her weight or whatever, it didn't matter. And I knew, of course, better than to say anything, reassuring because of my experience. And instead I just closed my eyes and felt what it must feel like to be her, what it felt like to be me. And I bent my head down and I looked down and I saw that my catheter leaked and my pants were wet. And I felt such overwhelming shame. I was afraid to look up. I don't think I would have felt that much shame if it was a child of either gender, or a man or a woman, but something about a young girl like that. I did look up, and there were tears in my eyes because I felt such shame. And there she was looking at me, and she saw. Without saying a word, she came over to me and just held me. I almost cried. So did she. The gifts of vulnerability. I can't hide it. I can't pretend that I don't feel my past. Oh, you guys can, but you do. I can't hide it. All I can do is bear witness to my life. Because I've learned by bearing witness to my life, whether I'm angry or scared or ashamed or feeling despair or hopeless, I've learned. I can't get away from it. It passes. I literally can't run away from my feelings. I said that a patient called me years ago to say he felt like he was in hell. So I said, get to a bus stop right away. And he said, what I hear a lot from my patients, what the hell are you talking about? So I said, you know when you're waiting for a bus, it doesn't matter whether it's raining or whether it's 100 degrees or snowing and freezing. It doesn't matter. The bus comes when the bus comes. And the bus always comes. So sit there. Bus is coming. Just wait. Flash them. Just observe. And I said to him, because you know what? When you feel like you're in heaven, bus is coming. It's the truth of our lives. So, how did I get to this place? From feeling disconnected, from feeling worthless and useless, from feeling scared and depressed, to feeling part of humanity, to feeling human again. And by the way, I'm very proud to say that is the title I give myself on my business card. It says Daniel Gottlieb, Human. And I am very proud of that title. So how did I get from all that to feeling human, grateful, and to feel heartfelt love for those people I encounter? All right, so you could say it's because I'm old and have had multiple traumas and I must have learned something. But is it something about this observer status I've been carrying my whole life? So, like Amishi said, I've had this radio show since 1985. And it's my show, so I use it for my own continuing education. So if there's something I want to learn about, I find an expert and bring them on the show. Learn about it. I don't have to read all those boring books. Because I still have that learning business. So I'm hearing about this mindfulness business. And there's a fellow named Michael Babe who runs the Penn program for mindfulness up in Philadelphia. I invited him down to do the show. And before the show, he and I were talking. And whenever I would ask him a question, there would be a second pause before he answered. And I could see what was happening. I could watch it. I was taking it in and then putting it out. And I'm thinking, I want to need some of that. So I took the 8-week program, and those first few meetings awakened something in me. It validated something I've been doing my whole life. This is 20 years ago. I understood it. I could create structure around it. I could learn how to hone these skills. I remember when I learned that thoughts were not orders. They were just thoughts. I giggled. It was an involuntary giggle. What a relief. How mind-altering. There's a woman in my class who had stage 3 or 4 breast cancer. She knew she didn't have much longer to live. I said, why are you taking this class? And she said, with the time I have left, I want to be where I am. I want to be where I am. So, this helped me bear witness 15 years ago when my sister died. You can add that. I fell in love with her each time I saw her. I was able to bear witness my own grief, my own loss, and allow my love for her to grow more and more deeply. Sat with my father as he died, as I allowed him to teach me about death with grace. And several times I was able to bear witness to my own death as I've come close many times and often remain there. Sartre said, you should live with death on your shoulder. And I have for the last 33 years. I also live with life on the other shoulder. And were it not for those two, I could never appreciate what life is, what it means, how divine each inhalation really is. Mindfulness is no holds barred. It's bearing witness to your own suffering and tolerating your own helplessness to fix it. It's bearing witness to your own experience of life and death and everything in the middle. It's experience without adjectives, metaphors, or even words. It's opening our hearts to our own lives and then the lives of others. But there's more, and I feel very strongly about this. Everyone who's experienced trauma and recovered, I've interviewed hundreds of these people and have one thing in common. They all say there was someone there when I needed them. We have a responsibility to be that someone for someone, to take this gift that we have and not just teach it, but be it, and do it with faith that being it teaches it. I want to share one thing. I had a dream many years ago that a God I don't consciously believe in came to me. This is a time of great despair. And said, I'm going to give you a piece of the universe to take care of. Don't make it bigger or better. Just care for it. And when I'm ready, not me, I'm going to take it back and your life will be over. And I looked down and it was 3 millimeters by 3 millimeters. And, the ego said, yeah, I got a radio show. I can do more. I can multitask. But then I realized 3 millimeters of the universe is an awesome responsibility. So what's my job? What's my responsibility? Is to nurture those 3 millimeters. How do I nurture it? With kindness, with compassion, with kindness towards this body that suffers, with kindness towards humans who suffer. Everything is habitual. Everything is a habit. Even love is a habit. The more you do it, the easier it is to do it. I ventured into the world of poetry. I wrote my first poem a couple of months ago. So, I don't even know if it's a poem, but we'll see. And when we're done, we have time for some discussion. When life comes at you, bare-knuckled and bloodthirsty, and you find yourself lying naked and beaten in unfamiliar lands, and you feel the world is watching you, broken and vulnerable, So you hide your anguish, too scared to cry, because if you do, you might never stop. And everything you thought was true, gone. So without a roadmap, you get up, frightened and fragile, and you take your first tentative steps into the unknown. You go to doctors to heal your body, but the scars are permanent. You see other doctors to heal your broken heart, but those scars are permanent also. After the shock and anger, the self-pity, the resentment, when you're too exhausted to fight against the truth of your life, you finally sigh and cry oceans of tears. You cry for all you've lost, for this good person who suffers. Then you cry for all who suffers. And so it begins. It's different from before. You find yourself not as strong physically, and not even strong enough to hide your own vulnerability. And then you become aware that the air itself smells sweeter, and the sun is brighter, and your love is less tentative and more generous. And you begin loving more people, and then all things. And loving seems easier and more abundant than ever before. And you close your eyes, and you hold your life gently. And you realize all of this love comes from the scar tissue in your broken heart. Thank you, everyone. Well,
I'm going to sit that down.
so what role does mindfulness play in my day-to-day life? Not much. Here's what I know for sure. I practice every day. I feel something missing when I don't practice. Some of the most important things it does for my life is I'm aware now when my heart is open and closed. You know, I often quote Victor Hugo, who talks about a heart being open and closed. And I know when the heart's closed, my soul's not getting oxygenated. You know, and, so it's very important for me to be aware of when it's open and closed. In my day-to-day practice, I am often much less reactive, much more reflective. I'm much more comfortable in the life I have. But it's what I said, Amishi, day to day, I'm much more loving. I'm much less afraid. I'm not afraid anymore of my emotions or my thoughts or I'm not afraid. No, demons, you know. I had a mother bring a 7-8-year-old boy to me, and I don't treat kids that age, that young, but it's a friend of the family. He was having trouble going to sleep. He had just seen videos of 9/11. He was scared. So, you know, he and I talked, and I told him about how when I was that age, I was terrified of the boogeyman under my bed. I was so scared, I was afraid to breathe, move my eyes. So, smart kid, he says to me, so is the boogeyman still under there? So I said, well, tell you the truth. I said, yes. But after all these years, you know, he's old, he's tired, can't do anything. I would actually miss him. But that's a variation of what mindfulness does for me every day. It's changed my life profoundly. Yes.
Dr. Dan, I just want to say thank you so much for not giving up bearing witness.
Yeah.
Your words and your being have really impacted me this evening. I'm curious, if you ever hear back from that young lady who you exchanged life forces with when you were in ICU?
You know what? The question was that I ever hear back from that nurse. The truth is, not only did I hear back from her, or vice versa, I could never see her. My neck was immobilized in an apparatus called, strangely enough, a halo system. So I couldn't turn my head, and she was sitting behind me, so she was faceless, which in a way made it even more powerful for me, more memorable.
Do you believe we all have our own journey, right? And that if so, maybe more on a spiritual level, do you think we, our spirit, our soul, knows what that journey is before we reach an understanding of what that journey is?
So, let me try to repeat the question. We're all here we all have our own journey. Do you think our spirit or our soul knows what that journey is before we get here, when we get here? I think you dialed the wrong number. Really, I don't know. I like to believe we all have many things in common. And I sort of talked about in one of my books, an old Jewish parable about how before infant's born, God infuses that infant with all the wisdom they need in life, and then seals that as the secret pact between the child and God puts the finger over it and goes, shh. oh, that's why we have a dent in our upper lip, that's God's finger. So my wish, my fervent wish, is that when we encounter each other, before anything else, we see the fingerprint. And I think that's part of what we have in common. That's part of what we evolve to. To see ourselves in others and caring for ourselves and others in the same way. And, you know, the golden rule, now we know there's neuroscience behind it. Yes?
I just want to thank you for the invitation to open my heart. And I was really touched by
Thank you for doing it. Thank you for doing it. Yes?
Is your wife still living?
No. No, she passed away. I forgot to put something on the checklist. She had MS, too. And died of anaphylactic shock. But that was after she left the marriage. We could have put that on the checklist.
I also want to thank you. It's been a wonderful hour for me. I want to hear if you have some more thoughts about the paradox of eventually mindfulness, trying to be present in this life that we have. And yet, that reminder on the shoulder about loss and death, it doesn't last to the end. And it's a certain insanity to me of that back and forth, a certain, a struggle there of that back and forth. It reminds me of the flashlight that we were talking about. And yet, the reminder does help stay present. So I'm just curious if you have something more to share on that.
Well, question was, you may have to come up here and talk into my lapel, because I don't think I can recapture that question. It was in the neighborhood of, you know, how do we live mindfully with death on our shoulder, knowing that it's there? I think the question is about, well, what's our relationship with death? You know, I'm not a dude that's going to be running towards it, but not killing myself to stay away from it. I could have said that better. But I'm also not running away from it. It's a simple truth of my life that I will die. And I think a couple of things has made me very comfortable with that. I often watch my loved ones at family gatherings, or even when we're just one-on-one and they don't know. I watch as though I'm not there anymore. And I just visualize that they're doing the same thing after I'm gone that they're doing now. And that makes me so happy. It gives me such peace of mind. I look out my window at the trees and the chipmunks and the birds, knowing that nothing will change after I'm gone. Something about that makes me feel very comfortable and peaceful. So, you know, it's, like I said, everything's a habit. So, spend more time, you know, practicing death. It'll be less frightening. John Kabat-Zinn has, in the opening page of his doctoral dissertation from MIT, it's, if a man dies before he dies, then when he dies, he doesn't really die. Which probably is known as MIT dissertation. No, comments, questions? One more. Gentlemen?
Hi, so I just came from a college bar, I was 21, so why not? So this question might seem kind of lofty, but, have you ever heard of Joshua Friedman, I believe, a Harvard professor? He writes about moral psychology. And I often wonder about why we care so much about feeling important and about having a life purpose. Because it seems like it would be much easier if I didn't care about having a life purpose. I wouldn't be so stressed out. But I do. And I also often wonder why we romanticize ideas a lot instead of just looking at the neuroscience and the physics on it. I like to say my religion is physics, but I don't know, do you have an answer?
I certainly don't have an answer, but I just have one thought about one of the many things you just said. And if I'm wrong, it won't be too bad because you're at the aforementioned college. Probably won't remember. Right, okay. Life purpose doesn't cause us stress. It's the life purpose we think we should choose that causes us stress. You know? I think I should be. I think I want to be. I think, you know?
Okay.
Operate from the heart and do what you love and nurture that skill. Start with love and let it expand from there. And always pay attention to your heart.
It takes a lot of vulnerability and not feeling brave enough to accept it. But,
What, the vulnerability? Yeah, very few people are. It's okay. I'll tell you what, you say strong enough or brave enough, and that's what I've learned about strength is that real strength is about being comfortable with your weakness. That's it.
thank you.
Thanks for the question. What are you doing afterwards?
I finished my homework, why not?
I finished my homework too. All right, everybody. Thank you so much.